Welcome to the Midnight Hotel, where every guest leaves a story behind.
The Maid with No Taste Part 2, The Recipe Dilemma. The night after meeting the guest in room 115, Violet did not sleep. Fear wasn't the problem. Fear had never stopped her before. What kept her awake was a question. The being in room 115 possessed an ancient hunger. Not ordinary hunger. Not the desire for food. Something deeper. Something that had existed for so long that it had become part of his identity. And Violet believed she knew exactly what he needed. The problem was convincing him. And more importantly, using that opportunity to finally escape her house arrest. For 6 weeks, she had been forbidden from leaving the Midnight Hotel. 6 weeks away from Midnight Street. 6 weeks away from the bookstore she desperately wanted to visit. If the guest helped her, perhaps that could change. The next morning, Violet arrived at the kitchen exactly on time, which immediately alarmed everyone. The chef noticed. Oliver noticed. Even the kitchen itself seemed suspicious. Because Violet was never on time. She worked quietly, prepared vegetables, made no complaints, started no arguments, and that was somehow more concerning than her usual behavior. Oliver eventually approached her. "What are you planning?" "I'm preparing vegetables." Without complaining. "Perhaps I'm growing as a person." Oliver looked at her, then looked at the top of her head. Growing may be a strong term. The knife left Violet's hand before she consciously decided to throw it. Oliver ducked. The knife buried itself in the wall. A moment later, he stood back up. "You are not growing as a person." "No," Violet agreed pleasantly. "But I am growing as a knife thrower." At 8:15 that morning, Violet attempted to murder the chef. Again. This attempt had taken 3 days to prepare. A carefully balanced weight, a pulley mechanism, a hidden trigger, an elegant plan. Unfortunately, at the exact moment the trap activated, a delivery arrived. The chef stepped aside. The weight crashed down where his head had been seconds earlier. The workstation exploded. The chef stared at the wreckage, then looked at Violet. Violet was quietly chopping vegetables. "The pulley appears to have failed," he said. "Very unfortunate." The chef narrowed his eyes. Violet continued chopping. The investigation ended there. For now, at 9 o'clock, Violet brought breakfast to room 115. And this time, she brought a bucket. The guest immediately noticed. "You brought a bucket." "Yes." In anticipation. "Yes." The guest stared at her, then sighed, because somehow this was exactly the sort of thing he should have expected. As Violet entered the room, her sixth sense activated. She felt the ancient hunger again. But this time she felt something else. Recognition. The guest already knew why she was there. Every plan, every calculation, every thought she had spent the night considering. He had already read all of it, including her intention to use him to get access to Midnight Street, including the bookstore, including everything. Finally, Violet stopped pretending. "I want to prepare a meal for you." The guest smiled. "I know. A meal that can satisfy the hunger." The smile widened. "I know that too." Then he asked a question. "What do you think the hunger wants?" Violet answered immediately. "Your heart." The room went silent. Then the guest laughed. Not politely. Not quietly. He laughed like someone who had genuinely not expected that answer. "You want to cook my heart?" Part of it, the laughter became even louder. Eventually, he explained that he possessed 3 hearts. One of them could survive losing its outer membrane without causing any problems. Violet nodded. That was all she needed. Then she explained her reasoning. The hunger wasn't looking for flesh. It wasn't looking for power. It was looking for something willingly given. Something that knew itself completely. Something that carried the weight of its own existence. Something that had lived long enough to understand exactly what it was. The guest listened carefully, and for the first time, the ancient hunger shifted. Then came the deal. If Violet successfully prepared a meal that satisfied him, he would personally request that the host remove her restrictions. But if she failed, she would owe him an external organ and an internal organ of her choosing. Willingly, the host would not interfere. The room became very quiet. Most people would have refused. Violet did not. She thought about the bookstore, thought about 6 weeks of house arrest, thought about the certainty she felt regarding the hunger. Then she accepted. Deal. The guest smiled, and then he coughed. Once, something massive landed inside the bucket. The outer membrane of one of his hearts. Green, still warm, covered in blood, so dark it was almost black. The smell filled the room instantly. Ancient, rotten, powerful, like something that had existed far longer than it ever should have. Violet stared at it. The guest simply adjusted his sleeve, as though removing part of his own heart was a routine administrative task. The real problem began after that, because Violet finally had the ingredient, but she had absolutely no idea how to cook it. She spent hours examining it, studying its texture, studying the blood, trying to understand what she was holding. Eventually, she realized something important. The ingredient remembered what it was. It carried centuries of existence within it. If she treated it like ordinary food, she would destroy the very thing that made it special. So she chose patience, low heat, slow preparation, respect instead of force. The blood became a reduction, dark and concentrated. The membrane slowly transformed. Its terrible smell faded. Something deeper emerged. Something ancient. Something complete. For the first time, Violet felt like she wasn't preparing food. She was translating a story, turning centuries of existence into something another being could finally understand. That evening, she plated the dish. The chef saw it, and immediately knew something unusual had happened. He said very little, but the look on his face suggested professional concern and professional jealousy, which, coming from him, was practically the same thing. Violet ignored him, picked up the plate, and carried it to room 115. The guest smelled the meal before she reached the table. Immediately, something changed. His attention sharpened. His expression shifted. For the first time since arriving at the hotel, he looked hopeful. He sat down, picked up his fork, and took a bite. Violet watched carefully, using every bit of her sixth sense, watching the ancient hunger, watching centuries of emptiness, watching a need that had become part of his existence. And slowly, the hunger began to disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, like ice melting under sunlight. Slow, patient, inevitable. The guest continued eating, and with every bite, the hunger grew quieter, until finally, it was gone. When he finished, he sat silently for several moments, then looked at Violet. For the first time, there was something new in his eyes. Something she had never seen before. Satisfaction. Not from being full, but from finding something he had been searching for across centuries. Across worlds. Across countless meals. "You were right," he said quietly. Then he smiled. "It appears I owe you a conversation with your host." Violet finally released the breath she had been holding all evening. Tomorrow morning, before he left, he would make the request, and her house arrest would end. As Violet gathered the empty plate, the guest spoke one final time. "You cook like someone who learned from something other than cooking." Violet paused, then nodded. "Yes." The guest smiled. "I thought so." She left room 115 carrying an empty plate, but also carrying victory. Behind her, the ancient hunger was finally silent. Ahead of her waited Midnight Street, and more importantly, the bookstore.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more stories.